Good morning, my brothers and sisters. Welcome to episode number 143 in the book of Genesis. We're going to be repeating some old news today. Why? Because you forget. That's the title today. So we're in a passage in Genesis chapter 35 where Jacob is instructed by God to go to Bethel. Bethel means house of God, and God reveals to him that that's a place where he dwells. And so Jacob is going to make an altar. He's going to remember 20 years ago. First thing he does, he says, hey, on the way, get rid of all your idols and garments and jewelry of impurity, probably of idolatry. He buries that stuff. And then God says, remember that I'm the God who answers you in your distress and that I'm with you wherever you go. So then we're going to jump into the passage in Genesis chapter 35. Read it with me, and then verse 5. And as they journeyed, a terror from God fell upon the cities that were around them, so that they did not pursue the sons of Jacob. And Jacob came to Luz, that is Bethel, which is in the land of Canaan, he and all the people who were with him. And there he built an altar and called it El Bethel, because there God had revealed himself to him when he fled from his brother. That was 20 years ago. And Deborah, Rebekah's nurse, that's one of his wives, died, and she was buried under the oak below Bethel. So he called its name Alon Bakuth. God appeared to Jacob again when he came from Paddan Aram and blessed him. And God said to him, your name is Jacob, no longer shall your name be called Israel. No longer shall you be called Jacob, but Israel is your name. So he called his name Israel. And God said, I am God Almighty, be fruitful and multiply. A nation and a company of nations shall come from you, and kings shall come from your body. The land that I give to Abraham and Isaac I will give to you, and I will give the land to your offspring after you. Then God went up from him in the place where he had spoken with him. And Jacob set up a pillar in the place where he had spoken with him, a pillar, a stone. He poured out a drink offering on it and poured oil on it. So Jacob called the name of the place where God had spoken with him Bethel. All right, so point number one is God is terrifying sometimes to those who do not follow him. That happens in the story. They don't pursue Jacob. Jacob was afraid of that because his children had slaughtered the men of Shechem because they raped their sister Dinah. So God is terrifying sometimes to those who don't follow him. But God is also terrifying sometimes to those who do follow him. He is holy, holy, holy. Read Revelation. Secondly, maybe read Isaiah. Like Isaiah, I'm not holy. My people are not holy. My church is not holy. And sometimes God reveals himself in power and in wrath, but that's the exception. Mostly, God is not terrifying to those who follow him. He helps us. He pulls us punches when we wrestle with him. So this is the place where Jacob, this place, Bethel, that we're talking about today, is the same place 20 years ago when Jacob saw angels descending and descending from heaven on a ladder. Now, he concludes and say, oops, I didn't see. Surely the Lord's in this place. I didn't know it. Whoops, what an idiot. He says, God lives here, and he declares the place the house of God. This is the gate of God. So in a sense, Jesus pulls his punches there, and he refrains from, abandoning the disciples all the way along, the knuckleheads. And with this wrestling story, he allows us to wrestle with him. And then when he comes, he invites us in Matthew 28. Come to me, all who labor and are heavy laden. I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and lowly in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. So Jesus comes as one who is gentle and lowly. So Mr. Jacob here, as you return to the sacred ground of previous contact with God, you get these memories and encounters from 20 years ago. It's fair game. So God invites us too. Maybe when you had a baby, or you saw God's power in creation, or maybe understanding a moment of season of grace where you didn't earn it, or a special quickening of his word for you. God asks us to remember. So yesterday, like Cam Jansen, remember, he asks us to remember the memories. So to use our past to help our future. So today, God helps Jacob with memory by bringing back physically him to the place where something happened. So Jacob says, Eureka, oh, I remember what happened here. The place helps him with his memory. He called it the house of God before. Why? Because God, he noticed God there. God lived there in a sense and was active there. And he saw angels ascending and descending on the ladder in a connection. So something connected heaven and earth. Now, Jesus in John chapter 1, verse 51, is going to claim that he is the ladder. So in a sense, Jacob had this encounter with Jesus, though he doesn't know it fully. Jesus is in lots of places in the Old Testament, and this is one that Jesus tells us that he was specifically involved with. And he says, yeah, that was me back there 2,000 years ago. So God appeared again. Now, the question I have for us as we conclude is, well, who forgot the first time? Did God forget his activity with Jacob? No. Who needed the repeat visit? Was it God? No, obviously. It was Jacob. So God revealed, but Jacob forgot or didn't have it in the forefront of his mind. So I want to talk about this podcast. This podcast is a daily podcast. Well, why is that? Because the audience and the podcaster are made of flesh. They both forget. They both need to be reminded of. So is our response to say, Jacob, what an idiot? No, God helps. God reveals. God doesn't, stomp on it. He knows we're made of flesh. So what does God say this time? He says newly, you get this new name. That's old news. He says you get this new mandate to be fruitful and multiply. Oh, wait a minute. That's old news. He says you're going to get these descendants. That's old news. You're going to get this land. That's old news. So he makes a new dedication, Jacob does, of a new pillar in an old place with all old news. God doesn't tell him anything that he doesn't already know. He hasn't already told him. And apparently he needed to be reminded, just like we do. So sometimes you go to a podcast and sometimes you go to a church for a new revelation. Now often, maybe more of the time, you go for the same revelation. Why is that? Because you forgot. So as never before, the plea for this podcast is, come back tomorrow. Well, why is that? Well, probably because you're going to forget what happened today. I'll see you tomorrow.